All right, welcome to another episode of Playing with Research in Health and Physical Education. Today we have a role reversal. Stephen Harvey is here to put me under the microscope to talk about my article that I published with a couple colleagues on the fitness integrated with technology curriculum, which was a part of my dissertation. So I think Dr. Harvey, you talked about navel gazing, so I will navel gaze away. So here we go with another episode. Go ahead. I'm ready.
Well, you deserve the navel gazing because you've done a great job with the podcast so far. So good on you.
Thanks.
So we felt that this would be a good way to give you an opportunity to talk about some of your own research in health and physical education. So the paper is called Student Perceptions of Technology Integration Using the FIT or FIT unit, and it was published in Research Quarterly in an online first, so it's out there and accessible, even though it's not got a volume or issue date. So let's crack on. So what was the purpose? What made you want to do this study in the first place?
So the basics are to just explore students' experience in the fitness integrated with technology unit and look at their perceptions of teaching physical education. And to give you kind of a little bit of background, there's a lot of research out there that says that technology can really enhance learning. We're on a podcast right now. We're talking about a technological tool to disseminate research so other people can learn. So there's a lot out there on it, but it's also a kind of conflicting research field, and whether it's a positive or negative influence on learning. So we just kind of wanted to see, does the curriculum work, and what are the students' perceptions of integrating that tech piece?
And there wasn't many studies in physical education, even from a technology standpoint, you could draw on to build this project, I guess. Yeah,
and Vicky Goodyear and Charlotte Kerner and Mikhail Quinterstedt have done a lot of research on this. There's research on apps being able to increase student engagement and motivation to be physically active out there. But Vicky Goodyear and colleagues have kind of seen that maybe tech integration isn't necessarily all it's hyped up to be. There are definitely really good versions of it, but if you don't implement it appropriately, we may actually have a negative impact on student learning. So, for example, if there's no personalized application to using tech, we're just saying everybody gets to 10,000 steps or an accelerometer. That kind of stuff doesn't necessarily work because the motivational effect fades away. The other thing to think of is that students need time to learn how to use this technology. And Goodyear kind of warned against the generational assumptions that we have with youth. Oh, they're kids, they're going to be able to pick it up, and you just shove down technology into the class without actually taking the time to teach. The work that they did with Fitbits can kind of backfire. In their study, they actually saw that using Fitbits was a monitoring technique. That's how the students perceived it, and it kind of left kids feeling guilty and shameful of their bodies. So
yeah, that's something you want to avoid. But on the sort of flip side, the technology, and you said about time, can be fun if it's integrated wisely, but you've kind of got to get over that initial bit of fun and them to see it as meaningful to learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Alex Darr and Danetta Cawthorn did the study in 2006 about the fun factor in PE. And we also, we come across this 3-letter word, fun. Like, people are really torn by it because they don't want to make PE just about fun. It should be about learning, obviously. But we kind of situated this paper in the theory of planned behavior as the quantitative aspect of it was to measure student attitudes. So we need to kind of consider student attitude here, and we did this, and that's published in another paper. But fun and enjoyment is a huge part of continuing to do things, and we want students to continue to lead a healthy life and be physically active.
And maybe one thing is that at the outset, there's this somewhat assumption that integrating technology would make this unit fun for the participants.
That was the hope.
Yeah.
That was the hope. So tech integration was tough, and it didn't And we'll get into the results,
Yeah.
but it didn't necessarily always go just as planned.
And then there was, I don't know if this was a secondary purpose, but there was this focus a little bit on you wanting to think about broader integration of like where students take their learning beyond, as Hellison would say, beyond the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So you wanted them to try and integrate some of this learning with the technology at home.
Yeah.
So they had access to the technology. So the technology was a move band.
Yep.
So they would have access to take that home and access an online database. So how was that working with the homework? Although, again, we'll come to the use of the term homework.
Yeah, we implemented homework with this project, so students had access to an online database that had their physical activity measurements, so their steps, their miles, their moves, which was what the move band did.
Right.
And honestly, background-wise, like I've been looking for articles on homework, and there's just not a lot of empirical evidence on students' perceptions of homework in PE. There are Joe Bird articles out there. There are unpublished dissertations out there about homework, but there's nothing really empirical and large scoping. So that was one of the interesting things that came out in this paper as well, of students' perceptions of homework.
Yeah. So as you talked about, you had the theory of planned behaviour as the theoretical framework. We don't want to go too deep into this, but it has three major components. Yep. So you want to just give us a brief?
Yeah, and for those of you that are more interested in this, we did a podcast on this, pretty short, fairly easy to follow. It's between episodes 4 and 5. It's our first theory breakdown, but kind of in a nutshell, and like a very, very tight nutshell. If you like something, you're more likely to keep doing that thing. It helps you if you have the means to do it, financial or otherwise, or a ride to that practice. If there's a bit of social pressure to nudge you towards doing it, that's going to help. And finally, you're probably good at it, or you find it easy or at least challenging. You don't find a lot of people wanting to do impossible tasks and hitting their head against the wall and continuing to do it. So, but again, the theory breakdown is a good source to go to. So
in terms of how you went about collecting some of the data and putting the unit together, we call it methods, I guess, in the research. So do you want to talk a little bit about why you did it, or like it was part of a bigger project? And
so it was part of a larger study and part of my dissertation. My goal was to find out a lot of things. There are a lot of moving parts. We wanted to see if attitude was malleable enough to change over the course of a unit. We wanted to see how students would react to homework. I wanted to see and test out the fit curriculum, and then what effect that would have on physical activity. So lots of moving parts. We focused this paper on student perception. So we had 221 students across 12 classes, and 6 different schools participated. Each class was taught with a different teacher to minimize the teaching effect. So that makes 12 teachers, which is another paper that we're working on. And they taught 12 lessons. So I guess I like the number 12 a lot. So 12 teachers, 12 classes. We interviewed 13 students, actually, because one of the students didn't want to do the interview. So I went to my backup, and then I interviewed that person, and then all of a sudden she wanted to do the interview again. So we had 13 students that gave information to this. So we had based on their accelerometer scores, so if they're high or low, their student attitude scores, high or low, the teacher's perceptions of their buy-in into the unit, high and low. So different variations of students that were purposefully interviewed. And basically when we go into the data, we had observation field notes. I was in all of those classrooms several times. The artifacts, everything that they produced, homework assignments, written reflections, projects, collages, homework assignments, and teachers' notes on the lesson plans, everything was included in that data.
And did you identify the students ahead of time, or because you said something about you had their accelerometry data. Was that based
Yeah,
on
so I looked at their baseline and because I interviewed at the end.
Yeah.
So I looked through who was really high on their accelerometer scores.
Right.
I interviewed a really high achiever and then someone that was consistently wearing it, but not having a lot of like step counts. And then I also took people who just wore it for one day and then just refused to wear it. I wanted to find out why they didn't wear it.
And I guess we'll get to that in a sec. So the unit was based on some kind of evidence, I guess. So the FIT unit, fitness integrated with technology.
Yep.
So you want to talk a little bit about that so people have context?
Yeah, so this is something that Fredrick and I developed. He's at Queens College now in New York, and basically it teaches fitness knowledge. So things like the FIT principle, the progressive overload, things like that to students while integrating math and English language arts into the fold, all through teaching with technology. So students are creating their own data sets that then we would take them into a computer lab, upload that information, teach them about averages, medians, ranges, talk to them about why is your average really high this week when we take out Saturday and Sunday. Now when we add Saturday and Sunday, why did your average go down? Oh, well, I play video games all Sundays. So kind of use their own data to teach them about fitness. And the ELA stuff came in the form of writing and reflection assignments and presenting visual posters of what fitness means to them. And at the end, they were working on their own fitness plan to be able to continue making their own choices and how they want to be healthy and physically active.
And one thing that I picked up after reading was that you didn't kind of get the teachers to throw what they were already doing out of the window. You kind of integrated this within a unit that they were already going to do. So if I was doing a soccer unit, for example, sorry, I'm biased with soccer, you would integrate this into that soccer unit.
Yeah, and that was the idea. We didn't want to go in and say, you have to teach this exactly like I'm telling you to. There are certain parts that need to happen, but you could do it in your own way, and you could integrate this, because fitness isn't, you get fitness in soccer, you get fitness in basketball, you get fitness in a fitness unit.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, we are now separating fitness, and we're going to do a 2-week fitness unit. So my goal was to kind of integrate it throughout and teach students who are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades that, hey, you go to a pumpkin patch or you go into a cheerleading practice, even though you don't consider that physical activity, which some of the kids didn't, it still counts as physical activity for them.
Yeah, no, and you're using the term fitness, I guess it's health and physical activity, behaviour or movement, and yes, there's exercise, so unpicking and unpacking some of that, I guess we can get to a little bit later. So obviously from the data collection that you had, and we'll pick up on the artifacts, particularly the collage that it did, because I know it's important. So for the listeners at this point, I'm giving you a signpost to that later. So you had 3 themes. Do you want to briefly mention those 3 themes and then talk a little bit about each one?
Yeah, so the 3 themes. Theme number 1 was technology and problems implementing it. The second one was about homework and PE, and then the third one was about potential motivational effects of technology on students. And so with the theme 1 about technology and implementing problems, and man, the technology integration was not easy. And we ran into a lot of issues with the bulky bands. They were not well received. Move Band obviously this was done in 2015, so they've upgraded their equipment. We were using the older equipment. It didn't work as well. Some students just took it off during PE while playing like volleyball. And they're like, oh, it hurts every time like the volleyball hits it. And I'm like, okay, well maybe a wrist-worn accelerometer is not great here. Yeah. They'd go to a soccer game and play soccer and the referee would say, you can't wear anything on your wrist. So they would lose all of that data, and then they got less motivated to continue wearing it because they were, not getting their accurate data. So the biggest 90 minutes of physical activity exertion counts as 0 because they have their, band in their bag. So
I take a sweatband and put it over my Fitbit or Apple Watch, wherever I have, when I'm playing soccer, so I get over that and so I hide it from the ref.
Yeah, and so some of the students did that, and the referees would come over and grab their sweatband, and they're like, hey, you can't have that underneath.
Interesting.
And again, it was a little bit more bulky, so you could definitely see it underneath. But the idea was that we wanted to use something that was affordable. Mm-hmm. So these were $20 in bulk at that time. Not every school can afford to buy Apple Watches for everybody. And then, there was definitely a novelty effect with it, and it wasn't very fashionable. It wasn't, great accessory to certain students. Mm-hmm. And then in the low socioeconomic communities, some of them didn't have a home computer to sync the data. And the way they charged it was plugging it into a computer. So not having a computer at home now is a completely different situation. And, we had gatekeeper accessibility issues. Parents would just say, no, you're not putting that software on the computer. So then now all of a sudden that homework piece doesn't work for that specific student. Yeah. The second theme was about homework and the cognitive learning in physical education, and the homework was a struggle. There was not a culture of homework in the classes. The best case scenario was that, students had to read an article or do a 100-word review before the end of the semester, right? So not really integrated well before. So when I came in, I think it was a little bit too much too soon, and I didn't phase it in properly. And the students had the split of mind that PE was not academic. So there was no need to do academic work, and now, of course, some of the kids did, but the percentage of the students that turned in the homework was really low. And to some, it was like I ruined PE for them. Coming in, doing this research study, they said, we used to be able to play and be active, and now they equated PE to coming in, reading, learning, and then getting to play some game at the end. So
I've faced the same in a couple of projects where, and I know that Rachel Gervich in their models-based practice monograph, they had students like assessing each other and writing things down, and that was something that they said was a bit of a barrier to the implementation of models-based practice, which would be an innovative type of pedagogical model for physical education.
Yeah, and sometimes we think, as researchers, this is a great idea. And then the students get a really, which is great, because I got to interview the students. And I asked them, and some of them, here's a good quote. I feel like physical education is, I don't know, you don't use your brain. I don't want to say that, but yeah. And she definitely said that, and I thought that homework assignments were a little ridiculous because it's pretty stupid that you had to do a collage for gym and questions about exercising for gym. So, so much for my attempt at integrating visual methodologies.
But there's a bit of a sense in this that of a separation of the mind and body, though.
Yeah.
Whereas, so it might be coming from a cultural, societal opinion about what physical education is for some people.
Absolutely. And then, so the last theme is about wearing accelerometers may have motivated the students. Now, we did see a motivational effect with the accelerometers. It spiked as soon as they got their bands. And in my observations, when I gave them out, they were doing cartwheels, they were sprinting back and forth, constantly looking back at how many steps they got. And then slowly, week 1, week 2, week 3, it kept on going lower and lower. And it kind of just leveled off. So, we had them wear the band for 6 weeks. So we just saw this spike and then a leveling off. But, the students also learned through the accelerometers and realized that, like I said, some physical activity that they were doing that they didn't consider physical activity, they were surprised and said, oh, cheerleading counts? Yeah, you're really physically active during that.
Yeah.
So,
in terms of moving forward, then you discuss your findings for those 3 themes in relation to the theory of planned behaviour. Do you want to just touch on a couple of the major insights?
Yeah, and I won't go too far into this, but we basically, if you read the paper, it's broken down through attitude, subjective norms, and behavior control, and intention and control. And we look at first attitude. For the most part, students enjoyed physical activity and the use of accelerometers. We aligned with the research by Goodyear and colleagues, mostly that integration was positive, got kids engaged, but not everybody loved it, and especially those who wouldn't get the full use of the band, meaning they ran out of battery or they couldn't sync at home. The homework assignments, the one assignment that had the most, turned in was the collage. So it seemed like if they enjoyed and they found it meaningful, they would turn it in and do the work. But overall, the attitude towards homework was not favorable. And I think it was too much too soon. With the subjective norms, so that's basically social pressure to perform something. So we found that the students who bragged about it, that they had their band on their arm and they went to a social situation and people were like, oh, what's that? And, accelerometers are huge, 2015. People were saying, oh, you have this. Those were the ones that, if they were getting positive feedback from family and friends about how cool it was that they were wearing it, those are the ones that had the highest likelihood of having consistent data across. And we look at behavior control. So for the most part, students enjoyed wearing them. When they first used the accelerometer, it was simple, kind of just put on your wrist and go. And as the time went on, they actually ended up having, it became a burden. Like, oh, I have to take it off when I shower and then I have to put it back on. And it's bulky. And so, they started to kind of decline, and the missing data towards the end of the study was a lot bigger. Once they ran into roadblocks, they used it less and less. So, and that's really important to note. I think tech integration has to be seamless and easy. If it's not, you're doing probably more harm than good. And finally, the part about intention and control, we saw that 3 factors influence the intention and behavior, and those were viewed, the students who viewed homework as positively and easy, they were more likely to do it. And those are, kind of sometimes when you integrate these theories that sound super fancy, it comes down to basics. Make it enjoyable for students. If they seem to have success and they know that they can succeed and they like what they're doing and it's meaningful for them, they're going to continue doing it.
So I think we're going to get to the conclusion, but probably this last bit's the most important, where you talk a little bit about in your conclusion about student voice, or a bit of a big take-home message. And we hear a lot of practitioners as well talk about student voice and choice, and this is related to self-determination theory. If I have autonomy and freedom, whereas here you were saying, yes, you can do your normal unit, but we want you to do the homework, we want you to do these assignments, we want you to wear this band. So inadvertently, you maybe removed a little bit of that autonomy from the students. So do you want to wrap that up?
Yeah, and I think, we have to consider student voice. And I think in hindsight, the research that I do now is much more different. It's very different, and we co-create learning spaces. We ask students for feedback while we're doing the project to meet the needs. We go in to talk to students before we enact a program. This was, in my dissertation, I will have these grand schemes. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to show how this curriculum works. And in hindsight, now, at the end, I asked students' opinions. I interviewed them. I had rich, meaningful conversation with the students, but I got that data after I had implemented the whole thing.
And then another thing was just not doing too much too soon, like you talked about as well.
Yeah. And it's that ambition I don't have my doctorate yet. Let me bite off a huge piece. And Steve Silverman, co-author on this, and my advisor, he was like, this is a lot. Are you sure? I'm like, yes, Steve, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from the structure of this, and I think it's a valuable piece in talking about how students perceive when you shove a lot of technology integration, English language arts, math, homework into a short period of time. This unit was 6 weeks. With the REACH program that Ray, Fredrick, and I are doing, we have 4 years of data from full year prolonged interaction with this program. That's a completely different paper than this is.
Well, and in that way you can hit these 3 target areas of homework, technology integration, and fun over a longer period of time. So it's not, and I think a little bit's the problem because of the dissertation format in the university. You want to get it done and get out of there.
Yeah.
So you tend to overreach.
Yeah.
Like that.
I like the puns.
And do too much too quick, whereas you really want to scaffold these projects and do, right, let's look at the technology, then let's look at homework, then yada yada over a longer period of time.
Unless you're landing an NIH, NSF grant, you can hire 4 or 5 doctoral students to work with you to go out and collect one piece of data, and you have a huge team to do it. Then you can make these big contributions, and as a doc student, unfunded, you're not.
But to finish on a positive, like one thing I took away from the positive side is, as well as the lessons learned from a research point of view, was the theory of planned behaviour really is a robust theory to try and explain away some of the findings for this project.
Yeah, thanks. And, the co-authors on this, David Daum, Ray Fredrick, Steve Silverman, one of my old undergraduate students actually worked on this paper as well, Josh Santiago. So I think it's a good start to, roll into other projects from this, and I think in the future we're going to start integrating this stuff, the technology, into the Reach after school program and make that a hybrid. So
good. Well, thanks for letting me be the host.
Yeah.
Hopefully I did a good job.
I'm sure this audio will come out crisp and clear. So thank you for letting me be on the other side of the mic.
That's great. No
Appreciate
problem.
it.